My grandmother, Sherry Jones Jacobini, also known as Gran, was born on July 25, 1947 in Fort Worth, Texas. When I asked my grandmother what was the event that most shaped her life, she explained to me that at the age of 16 she became a pastor's wife and a mother all at the same time, and at such a young age came with a lot of responsibility. She also said being a missionary in Africa changed her life and made her become the person she is today. At the age of 16, my grandmother was the assistant for the owner of Six Flags Over Texas, while my grandfather worked in a corporate office. My grandfather and grandmother have a heart for the Lord, and one day my grandfather told her that God was calling them to the mission field over in Tanzania to build churches. My grandmother and grandfather packed up their bags along with my mother and went over to Africa to build churches sponsored by the church Bethel Temple from Fort Worth, Texas. My grandmother lived in Africa for 5 years as a missionary. Living in Africa in general shaped my grandmother to be the person she is today because she had to turn to God and trust in Him and His plan. She was in a brand new environment at such a young age while being a mother and also juggling being a preacher's wife and all of its responsibilities. In some way, she felt like she always had to be perfect because she was a preacher's wife. My grandmother also had to send my mother to a British private school in Africa and took her away from her childhood friends at home. She had such a guilt on her heart, but she knew that this is what God was calling their family to do, and to serve others and the Lord. While Gran was over in Africa building churches, she was affected by the malaria disease. My grandmother did not have a lot of money, and it was a hard time in her life being diagnosed with malaria over in Africa with such low medical treatment there, and she had barely any money while trying to take care of my mother at the same time. This event specifically shaped my grandmother in Africa because she had to turn all of her fears and worries to God. Malaria is a disease caused by a plasmodium parasite transmitted by the bite of an infected mosquito. During this time, being over in Africa and her being very, very sick caused a lot of stress on her marriage. Eventually, my grandmother got a divorce from my grandfather and moved back to Texas with my mother, and they had to start a completely brand new life. When talking to Gran, it was really cool to see how strong and faithful to the Lord she was, no matter the circumstances that she went through. At times she did not understand why God put her through these hardships, but she knew in the end He had a plan, because God is good and faithful. She became a stronger woman from this all and did not need to be a preacher's wife to find her identity in God like she thought she had to before, but she found her identity in God by herself because she knew God was protecting her at such a young age and that she was loved. He never left her side during these hardships. Gran said she is more independent and more of a hard worker from being a single mom, and living over in Africa as a missionary taught her to have a servant's heart. Through these events, my grandmother and my mother walked through them together, and their relationship became even stronger. My grandmother considers my mom her best friend because they had to lean on each other. My grandmother, being a single mother and struggling financially, she always continued to show my mother love and always showed her love for the Lord to my mother. Through my mother, my grandmother has also shaped me as well. She has taught me to have a servant's heart. It'd be my dream to go over to Africa and serve over there and teach in an orphanage. Their qualities have also been embedded in me. They've taught me to be strong, and no matter what I will walk through, to always trust in the Lord. I hope to carry out what my grandmother has taught me and pass it to my own children someday. I'm so blessed to have Gran as my grandmother, and I'm so proud of the woman she is today. I admire her and love her so much.